Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the City of Beaumont regular council meeting for Tuesday, May 24th of 2022 at 6 p.m. It's already May 24th already. I can't believe we're first 5 months of the year has gone by. So I will call the meeting to order and I'll begin with the land acknowledgement. We are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6 and the Métis homeland. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We're all treaty people. The peace treaties bind us all. Next, I have two proclamations this evening to present to Council. Seniors Week, June 6th to 12th, 2022. Whereas seniors make a difference in our community, from supporting family and friends to volunteering. And whereas the value seniors bring to the community is priceless, as they hold our history, have valuable memories, and stories of where we come from and experiences that we help us look to the future. And whereas this year marks the 33rd anniversary of Seniors Week in Alberta, honor the enormous contribution of seniors in the City of Beaumont, as well as across the province. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Daneluik, do hereby proclaim June 6th to 12th, 2022 as Seniors Week in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 18th of May, 2022. Next proclamation is Beaumont Pride Week, June 3rd to 12th, 2022. Whereas on June 3rd to 12th, Beaumont celebrates the diversity that strengthens our community. The celebration is for everyone in the community, including individuals who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, queer, two-spirited, and other sexual orientation and gender identities. And whereas the intent of Pride Week is to celebrate the diversity in Beaumont and to be safe and a welcoming community for all people of all sexual orientation and gender identities to attend school, to work, to raise a family, and to start a business and to live. And whereas Beaumont Pride promises to provide hope and support for our employees, our youth, other community members who experience bullying and harassment based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. And whereas the Rainbow Pride flag is raised in honor of our LGBTQ+ employees and community members. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Daneluik, do hereby proclaim June 3rd to 12th, 2022 as Beaumont Pride Week in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 18th of May, 2022. At this point, we will move on to the second part of our agenda is to adopt the agenda. Administration, are there any changes to the agenda this evening? Ms. Bujaya?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We do have a couple of change requests for the agenda. We would like to ask to have the item 5C, request for extension, several reports, moved to the closed session pursuant to section 25 of FOIP. And we would also like to ask council to consider adding item 5H, budget amendment for water system renewal program, St. Vital Neighbourhood. We did have a chance to circulate that report to council in advance of the meeting. Hard copies are available at your desks. And if council adds this item to the agenda, we will also update the public copy available on the website.
Thank you. Is a member of council willing to move the adoption of the agenda as amended? Councillor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
I'll move the adoption of the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion, council. Seeing none, all those in favor, 1 second, please. I'll get the voting up here. Please vote accordingly. That carries unanimously. Thank you, council. On another note, Councillor Miller is unable to attend this evening. She sends her regrets, and we wish her well to see you next time at the next council meeting. So thank you very much. We are just down to 6 of us this evening. Next on our agenda is open forum. I believe we have a guest speaker this evening on open forum. Would you please come forward and state your name, and I'll give you some details on how the open forum actually works. I guess that'd be you, yes. So before you state your name and have your presentation, it's a 5-minute open forum. Now, my understanding is you have spoken to a couple of councils with your concerns. You have several concerns to bring forward, and that's a good thing. But we do try and keep our presentations to about 5 minutes. I have some discretion, which I'll use if I need to. So I will encourage you to take your 5 minutes, get your points across. And I'm sure council will have some questions for you. As the topic you're going to be discussing, I have questions myself. So will be a chance, in case you can't get all your points across in the 5 minutes, a good chance you get some more of your points across in the question period thereafter, okay?
Thank you.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Your state your name, please, for the record, and your 5 minutes will begin when you're ready.
Yeah, my name is Anthony Colesmith. I'm a resident of Beaumont and Forest Heights. So on May 26, 2020, I presented to council in opposition to the then proposed plan for Forest Heights where the development changed from a cul-de-sac to a through road. During that council meeting, concerns were raised by citizens regarding the proposed plan, its impacts to traffic, safety, the existing mature tree stand. During the meeting, the developer spoke, committed to being a good corporate citizen, and after much discussion amongst the council members regarding the trees in specific, and how best to maintain as many as possible, development was approved later that evening. And here we are 2 years later. So based on the discussion at council in May of 2020 and the time given to the topic, one can reasonably infer that maintaining trees was important. Since that meeting, due to regular flooding of the path, the grading has been modified in the multi-way north of stage 3B. The result of this regrading is that melt and rainwater is now directed into the existing tree stand, resulting in standing water in the tree stand and an increase in tree mortality. I'm not an expert by any means. I recommend you verify this for yourself, but the approved drainage plan for that section appears to show water should be directed away from the tree stand towards the stormwater drain. A week ago Sunday, one of my neighbors videoed one of the builders using their bobcat to bulldoze one of the trees in the boulevard. When he approached them, he was met with hostility and disdain. Bulldozing trees or hitting them with construction trucks isn't new. I've seen it personally many times, and a number of the neighbors have shared similar experiences with me. There's an extension to the pathway between 3B and Glenry Park. A swath of trees about 30 feet wide was cleared to accommodate the new pathway. Understandably, the swath wider than the path had to be cleared to allow for equipment access, and it was discussed previously. The resolution was that new trees would be planted after construction to replace those between the path and the existing tree stand. The new trees have been planted, however, they're 16 inches tall, like yay high. They're so small, they've been mistaken for twigs and have been hit with the mower. Trees, that's one thing, but safety is quite another. On that west side of that tree stand, running north and south in parallel, there's a high pressure gas line. During construction of the new pathway to Glenry Park, there weren't any locates called in. I confirmed this with the equipment operator. The excavation came within inches of hitting that high pressure gas line, and equipment was driven over top of the high pressure gas line. The gas company came out after the excavation was done and located the line after hours to confirm the line hadn't been damaged. The excavator's attitude and response at the time was one of apathy and disregard to the hazard. The work done in this pathway was done such as to put everyone in the neighborhood at risk. We were within inches of making national news, or potentially. In subsequent conversations with the developer, they indicated that the work was city work. The cities indicated it was developer work. Nobody's taken any interest in this near miss, let alone accountability. What reassurance can we have that it won't happen again? Little, as a basement was just excavated last week on 48th Ave without any evidence of locates at all. Garbage on the lots, on the streets, blowing into ponds, blowing into neighboring stages has been commonplace. So common, in fact, neighbors have inquired about receiving additional garbage cans to handle the waste. We've contacted the developer regularly regarding this debris as it appears to contravene Section 9, subdivision appearance of their architectural design guidelines. This section describes cleanliness of the site, keeping excavation materials within the lot and keeping the site free of garbage. The complaints are either dismissed out of hand, ignored, or given the throwaway phrase, "We're planning a big cleanup in the next few weeks." My neighbors and I have contacted Bylaw regarding the construction equipment and materials left on sidewalks for months at a time. We've spoken with Bylaw regarding the excessive amount of garbage and litter on the roads, in the lots under development, in adjacent finished properties, in water bodies. We've even come across feces and toilet paper on the road prior to a porta potty being installed in the development. Sometimes we've also called Bylaw regarding the complete lack of snow removal on these lots and the complete lack of weed maintenance. Sometimes Bylaw gave a warning. Sometimes it was simply an informal conversation with the offending party. The result each time is that after a delay of a few weeks, there was some cleanup, by no means complete or adequate, then things go right back to the way they are. Moving on from garbage and trees, I'd like to speak to some of the work being performed there as well. In Forest Heights, there's an issue where builders fold, start up with a new name, and then continue building homes. There's a pattern of this behavior. The result is that homeowners with valid warranty concerns are not able to have matters addressed. Their builder no longer exists, but those same individuals are building right next door under a new company name. This issue has been brought up with members of council in private conversations between myself and others. It's been acknowledged that there's a problem, yet it still seems to persist. And the cleanliness and safety issues I've described previously seem to be most pronounced at these locations. It's my understanding that in February 2020, a decision was made to remove section 5.16, application for notification requirements from the land use bylaw. This section was in fact, quote, deleted in its entirety. Previous to that section's deletion, if a builder or homeowner wanted to install a second or third or fourth suite, notification to the neighbor was required and the neighbors could object. Since that section's been removed, there's been a dramatic increase in the number of secondary suites. One home was even built ready to have 4 living areas in a single family residence. This is an apartment. The addition to the secondary suites, the changes the feel of the neighborhood, stresses the utilities which weren't designed for this, creates issues with parking and creates tension amongst neighbors. I'm not opposed to all secondary suites, just the number that are going in here. I've heard that the intent of the change was at least in part to increase density. The merits of that are debatable, but if it is in fact an objective, I believe council has the ability to not approve a phase unless it meets whatever standards of density it chooses. Why approve a development for single family residential only to have the nature of that development changed without input from the residents? Looking at the lot maps in Forest Heights, the lots are described as single family residence, but that isn't necessarily true with all the secondary suites. The secondary suites and the change in bylaw that allowed their development has resulted in a misrepresentation of the neighborhood people are buying into, the single largest investment of most people's lives. We've been sold a neighborhood of single family residence, but that's not necessarily what's being built. I'll wrap it up here quickly. Any single instance of the issues with trees, garbage, debris, lack of snow from sidewalks, lack of weed maintenance, unsafe excavation practice would be understandable as it's an active development. What we're seeing is a pattern of these behaviors and a lack of action from the developer and general disregard for the neighbors living in this area. I doubt anyone would argue that this pattern of behavior is consistent with the commitment to be a good corporate citizen made back in 2020 when the phase was approved. We're also seeing a lack of meaningful results from law enforcement. In several cases, calls to Bylaw are simply not returned. I've spoken with Bylaw and they indicate they're understaffed and simply haven't the capacity to respond to these issues. When Bylaw does respond, often an informal warning is given. Perhaps if the bylaws were enforced as written, things might change. The bylaw does state that upon a second offense, the fine is increased and a stop work order can be issued. Informal warnings, though perhaps addressing the issue temporarily, are not leading to meaningful change. Finally, the number of secondary suites being approved is changing the character of the neighborhood. The development is still being advertised as single family residence, but that's not necessarily true anymore with the land use bylaw change. The neighborhood the neighborhood into which the people have bought homes is being misrepresented. So as many of you campaigned on a promise to increase communication and input from citizens, we've removed the section of the bylaw that gives that communication and input from the citizens. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. We're well past 5 minutes, but it's important to balance the needs to be heard by citizens versus our procedural in the meeting. So a little attitude is always a good thing. And I do appreciate your coming here. It's not easy to come to council and express your concern. You did it very eloquently, and I appreciate that. Council, members of council for questions for our presenter, please. Councillor McCook Swain, Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, a couple of things. First, thanks for coming and sharing these concerns with us directly. We get a lot of feedback, I'll say, in the background, and really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak with us tonight. I was here in 2020 and voted for this change that you talked about, and I absolutely recall the good corporate citizen language that was shared. And so hearing some of the things that you're talking about is frustrating. I won't get into all of them because we don't have that time tonight. I think you'll hear from other councillors some of the frustration there. The many issues raised, but the biggest one for me is just around the safety and the locates and that process. So I'll ask a question for administration just around what our bylaw, what our requirements are around one call and all that sort of stuff. I mean, this is recognizing that, I take you at your word, Anthony, but recognizing that this is one person's word around it. Like, what is our process for this? This seems pretty straightforward that we should be requiring this. So I wonder if administration has an update just on the line locating perspective of what Anthony shared. And if you need more time and don't have it off the top of your head, obviously none of us were aware that was coming up, so feel free to take the time on that.
Ms. O'Neill.
Thank you. It is common practice to do locates, developers, builders. It's common practice. I don't know if there's specific legislation, but we can, if you do a councillor inquiry, we can get back to you quickly.
Okay, I'll leave it there. And I guess we'll bring that up in a little bit here. Thank you. Appreciate that. And thank you again for coming in. Just to be clear, sometimes this process when you come in and share with us and it makes it look like there isn't much action because we're kind of moving through the agenda. But I think what you've shared today has been heard by 6, and I know the 7th will be watching as well, councillors. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Councillor Tessier, Renee, you have the floor.
Thanks for coming. Oh, we still
Sir?
got you here. Yeah.
No, you're still in the hot seat. You're still in the hot seat.
Yeah,
Just
you're
kidding.
still in the hot seat for a while
Fair
here.
enough.
So thanks for coming in. I share a lot of your same concerns as I live in the area and see the same thing. And obviously with such a fast growing city, we're seeing those growing pains right now. I think it's pretty obvious that we as a council need to figure out some sort of solution to these problems, right? Everyone here knows how much I love trees, so I almost cried during that story. There's a video going around about that, but for your additional dwelling units, I hear you on that part too. And we did get approved to review the land use bylaw, and that public engagement is just beginning. So I strongly suggest yourself and any of your neighbors or anyone in Forest Heights to show up to that, because that land use bylaw was revamped in 2019. And now we're seeing, small issues that have come from that bylaw that we're looking to rectify. But again, a lot of those, like the dwelling units, was specific to that review, along with parking stalls and home-based businesses. So please communicate that out to your fellow residents and get out and say something in those. So just wanted to mention that. Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks.
Thanks, Renee. Appreciate that. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. Steve, you have the floor, followed by Councillor McCook.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and thanks for coming in and sharing your thoughts. As Councillor Monkoff-Swain had said, I recall a robust discussion around the trees and keeping the trees in that lot. And for me, 16-inch trees isn't good enough. And I'm going to work to try and find a solution to that. I'm telling you that right now in front of you and on this recording, because planting 16-inch trees there isn't good enough. That isn't the spirit of the discussion that we had with those people who were in that meeting. That it was a long meeting, and there was a lot of attention paid there. And quite frankly, one of the reasons that got my vote is because there was a commitment to leaving those trees there, and I've watched them get whittled away. So just want to let you know that I hear you on that, and thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Councillor McCook, followed by Councillor Barnhart. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. To echo my other councillors, thank you for coming out. I definitely empathize with a lot of what you said. I myself live in a new area as well, so I understand with some of the garbage issues. To clarify, is it numerous builders that are issues, or is it more one builder that has changed names that you're familiar with? Or
There's certainly some that are worse than others. The problem is generally consistent, I'd say, with the exception of one builder who seems to be doing a fairly decent job.
okay. And then can you just clarify with me again, bylaws response, it was predominantly warnings that you're aware of, or?
Based on conversations I had with Bylaw, they said, yes, we had a conversation and they've committed to clean it up, like an informal warning as opposed to an actual official first warning.
And then no cleanup was
And
really
then
done
very little
subsequently to
cleanup,
that?
and then a subsequent verbal warning, where I
Okay.
think if there were the first warning, then the second step is pretty well laid out.
Okay. Thank you. I know this issue has also been brought up previously, so I'm sure as council will probably look into it further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, followed by a second round for questions starting off with Councillor McCoff-Swain. So Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much for coming in. I know it takes a little bit of extra time and, excuse me, preparation to do what you've done, and courage. I appreciate that. I missed a lot of what you said. Unfortunately, the sound in here is not good enough for my ears. So I'm wondering if you could share a copy of your presentation, or
I'd
some
be
way.
happy to. I'd be happy to. It's not terribly well formatted or pretty as I intended to just read it, but you may have a
No,
copy.
I don't want to miss anything that you've said, and afraid I did. So if
Yep.
you wouldn't mind sharing that with me, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
With us. Thank you.
Thanks. Before I go to Sam, thank you, Councillor Barnhart. You actually read my mind. So one thing I will do is I would like a copy of your presentation given to my office as soon as you possibly can. I have some concerns with this because many residents have aired this concern before, and most recently I've had a couple of meetings with residents in the Forest Heights area. I've walked a couple of sites with some residents because they asked me to see me, and my job is to be responsive to the members of the community on behalf of council. And I think there are some places where I don't think it's a very good job being done. So to be perfectly fair, bylaw may have suggested they're understaffed, and may well be the case. We may be looking at personal opinion. We may need to look at hiring additional bylaw people in the next round of budget talks. That's a possibility. If the job's not getting done because of lack of resources, and that could very well be the case. I'm not saying it is or isn't, but that may be something you need to look at the budget for next year. But there is still this year that's at hand right now. So let's start with a copy of your letter to my office as soon as you possibly can. I may give you a follow-up phone call, have a following discussion, okay?
That'd be great. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
I'll let Councillor Muckoff-Swain have a second round of chats, and we'll try and wrap things up. We're well past our usually 5 to 8 minutes, but this is an important conversation to have, and I'm exercising my discretion to do that. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you for going around it. And what really triggered me is the comment from Councillor McCook, which was a good one. You know, we've heard this before, and you know, the comment was, I'm sure we'll look into this. I guess what I struggle with, and maybe a question back for administration, is, you know, we constantly hear these things come up. And you know, 6 months goes by, and then we have another conversation, and I know that you guys are working on it, but what I'm at a loss is how do we have that conversation? I know we've got that community standards bylaw, if that's the right place. So I wondered if you could just provide a bit more clarity around how do we actually have this conversation so that, you know, the next Anthony doesn't need to come and share that same story, and for us to sit here and say, oh yeah, that's terrible, let's do something about it. How do we actually have this conversation?
Ms. Bujaya?
Thank you very much. Through the mayor to Councillor Muckoff-Swain. You know, the resident has raised a pretty broad number of issues, so it's a pretty big conversation to have. From a procedural perspective, maybe the best option would be to have a member of council put forward a notice of motion tonight directing administration to provide a report that would address the issues identified during this open forum discussion. And that would allow administration to prepare a report that addresses the points raised. Administration would also appreciate a copy of the speaker's report to aid in that preparation.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm sure you see a bunch of heads nodding around, and so I'm sure you'll help us craft something in the background. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate that. So if you're comfortable leaving that with me this evening, great. If you're not, you want to reformat it or redo it and drop it off tomorrow, or Thursday at City Hall, would be appreciated.
I will send you a copy
Okay,
of it.
awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you for coming in. Appreciate that. Hope you enjoyed the time we've given you, and we do appreciate your
I do.
coming in, and we'll be talking again.
Thank you very much for the
Thank
time.
you. Administration, if I may, I know based on what Sam was mentioning a moment ago, I did a councillor inquiry recently about this topic. We got some replies back. Perhaps we can do a notice of motion this evening and we can get that out tonight. Thank you. I'll make that motion when it's appropriate, or Sam will figure it out at that time. Thank you. At this point, I believe I forgot to talk about the consent agenda, which I know my administrative people were looking at me going, Bill, you missed a step. So I was eager to hear from Anthony. I was eager to hear from him. So sorry about that. I missed a step. So with that, we are going to move to the consent agenda. If I may, Ms. Bujaya, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to share some good news with you. You did not, in fact, miss a step. The open forum was first, so you are right on time.
Once in a while, a little wood in the ball, once in a while, a little wood in the ball. Great. Well, that's perfect. Right on time then. So with that, we will move to the consent agenda. Is there a member of council willing to move the consent agenda as presented on the screen? Moving 4A, 4B, and 4C to consent, and 6B Regional Assessment Review Board. Councilor McCoff-Swain. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, as long as you don't make me read it all out. I'll happy to move the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Council discussion on the motion on consent agenda. Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Please vote accordingly. Carries unanimously. Thank you, council. All right, moving right along then. We are moving now into 5A, business items, Black Gold School Division High School graduation celebration. All right.
Okay, can you hear me? This feels very close.
Yes, we can.
Good evening, your worship and members of council. This evening, I have an informational report on an option for supporting Black Gold High School graduation through an addendum to the facility joint use agreement. On February 8th, 2022, council requested administration prepare a report on cost options to allow Black Gold School Division to use the BSRC for graduation. Previously, Black Gold graduation has taken place outside of Beaumont. The planning committee is scheduled to use the BSRC Fieldhouse for this year's celebration. Administration has provided council with an option that would allow Black Gold School Division to receive a rental credit for up to $4,500 for one event per year. Black Gold administration would determine what that event would be. The rental credit would subsidize the cost of the rental. This year, the total rental fee for the graduation is $6,888. If the credit would be applied to this amount, the outstanding amount would be $2,388. The addendum is included in your package. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about this information or the addendum attached.
Well, mic's off. Thank you, Ms. Cuthbert. Appreciate that. Questions from council on the report presented just a moment ago. Councillor Barnhart, Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. This could just be the long weekend and I just can't figure it out, but I'm just wondering, is there anything that are they asking to have it all waived, or are they okay with paying the $2,388?
Yeah, my understanding is they are okay paying with the $2,888.
They're okay with that?
Yes.
That is what you're recommending, and they've already agreed that that's good for them.
Yes, we did have some of those conversations, yes, with the Black Gold administration. That's correct.
I wasn't sure from the report if that's where it ended up, but thank you very much for that. Appreciate that.
Perfect. Any further discussion from council or questions for our presenter? Seeing none. Ms. Bujay, if I may ask the question, is this a motion we need to make to accept this report or to grant this amendment? How do we do this? Please make sure I do it correctly. Thank you.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. There is a recommendation that council can consider in the report that would allow the amendment to the current joint use agreement between the city and the school board. So I can just share my screen. And if a member of council is willing to move that motion, then we're off to the races.
Thank you. Councilor McCook-Swain, would you please speak to the item on the screen, please?
Yeah, so I'll move the motion on the screen. And I'll read it into the record this time, that the addendum to the facilities joint use agreement between the City of Beaumont and the Black Gold School Division be approved, and that the mayor on behalf of the city sign the addendum as set out in attachment 1 of the May 24, 2022 report, Black Gold School Division High School graduation celebrations. And if I could just quickly speak to that,
Yes.
just want to say thank you for working through that with the team from Black Gold. I know they really appreciated the support. So thanks for going through that and taking the time. So yeah, when these things come up, I've heard nothing but great feedback from you and your team. So thank you.
I'll speak to the motion as well too. I'm also thrilled that we're able to accommodate our friends at Black Gold School Division to have the graduation here in Beaumont. I'll be speaking at it on the end of the month here in June, I guess, next month already. I'm looking forward to that opportunity. So I'm very glad administration can come to an agreement to help out the grad committee and the Parents Association to get this grad up and running within our own borders where it belongs. So thank you very much. Seeing no further discussion on the motion, is there discussion or we're voting? Discussion? Oh, thank you. I see Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Daneluik. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry, yeah.
I just want to thank the administration for getting this in the agreement, because it always used to really hurt when you had a child get to that point and you couldn't go to their graduation in your own city or your own town and you needed to go. It was always a great ceremony, but it was just something that just used to really upset me. And I thought this is what we needed to see happen. So I'm really glad that this has come to this point and appreciate the work you did to get us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councilman Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor. Hang on a second. There you go.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. And thanks to Councillor Barnhart off the front end, asking the dollars and cents questions there. Just one more question on the dollars and cents. The remaining amount outside of the credit that we're putting forward here, is that to be covered by the school through the school budget, or is that is there a grad fundraising committee that is making this money to pay up the shortfall? Where's that shortfall coming from? Whose budget and who's working for it and all that good stuff?
You know, I don't know if I can answer that one. I'm not sure how their financials are working in the background, whether it's a committee or right directly from the school board. I don't have that level of detail on their end on how they're funding to pay the remaining amount.
Yeah, that doesn't change my support for what's in front of us, but you know, it just made me wonder, you know, is the grad committee fundraising, you know, to prop that up, or is it, you know, a school budget item? So it doesn't change my support. Just wondered if you had the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Please, council, vote accordingly. And that does carry unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Cuthbert. Appreciate that. Thank you, council. An excellent vote and a great result for our school. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is 5B, implication of expanding hours to seniors access membership. Ms. Cuthbert, are you also presenting that as well?
I am.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. On December 7th, 2021, Council requested administration prepare a report on the feasibility and implications of expanding the hours for the senior program to 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The Senior Access Program has been in place since January 1st, 2019. This program allows seniors aged 60 plus to access drop-in activities at the BSRC between 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. daily at no cost. The activities include drop-in public, lane swim and aquafit, drop-in court and field sports, drop-in fitness access and classes, use of the track, and drop-in ice use. We do program some activities towards seniors during these times. There'll be fitness classes, aqua classes, pickleball. Expanding the senior access membership program may result in a loss of revenue from memberships and drop-ins. In 2021, we collect $33,000 in fees. In addition, programming targeted at seniors during the extended hours may be complex with rental, school use, and regular scheduled programming for other demographics. If there's any questions or anything I can clarify from this report.
Thank you, Ms. Cuthbert. Appreciate that. My first comment is the number is higher than I thought it was going to be in terms of cost to expand the hours. So recommendations to receive the report as information, and we can probably delay it or postpone this discussion to the next round of budget talks for next year, as opposed to trying to implement this at this point. However, having said that, I'm open to council to any questions or concerns, questions for our presenter on the report before I ask for a motion to accept as information. Councilman Newkirk, you have the floor, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to hone in on those numbers a bit. They're pretty round numbers. So you know, what does the data look like that administration is using to come up with those numbers?
Yep, we used our recreation software system, so we're able to pull the memberships and the dollars allocated. It was very, very close right to the $33,000. So yeah, I probably don't have the exact dollars and cents right down, but it was very close to that $33,000. It is probably important to note that it's going to be around that 33,000. Unfortunately, we haven't been open for a really long time, so that could be adjusted and flex next year as well too, with increased usage and being able to be open more, less restrictions, of course.
Yeah, that was going to be my second part, is that, you know, that number is now, you know, what happens as, you know, more people get out. So yeah, you anticipated that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy, you have a question? You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you again for the information. Has there been any look at the age of 60 being the age of qualifying as a senior in our facilities? I think that's what you're still basing this on, is 60 as a senior?
Correct, 60 as a senior, yes, is what we're basing that on, yeah.
In my opinion, 60 is quite young. I like to think of it that way. And so I'm just wondering if you have do you have enough data that we could actually look into that a little bit further in terms of the access for 60, 65, 70? I mean, I do know the 75 plus was a motion I made when I was first on council way back when. And to me, that there were the numbers of people at that particular age that were accessing the facilities and that would benefit from it. We really had a motive there to increase that. I'm just wondering with, a lot of people that I know that are age 60 are still quite active. So I'm just wondering about the feasibility of that age changing. And if you've looked at that, or if you have any, maybe perhaps that's coming back at budget time, Mayor, if that's where you're going with this, just to get more data on this, because I'm just really feeling this would be quite an expense in terms of the loss of revenue of people that are using the facilities now.
We haven't done any, we have not looked at changing any ages. So these, the ages that are set for our memberships that kind of go back to our Aquafit days. So we didn't make any adjustments since then. It is something we could probably look at. I don't know how our data would look if we were to pull that through our rec software system, if we could determine ages of who is using that. They're very specific ages. I'm not sure what I can pull or what I could bring back to you, but it's certainly something we could look into.
And if I could, just for the rest of council, where I'm going from is the purpose of doing this is not because of their age. At least I don't think. If it's a fee reduction, it would be on the basis of their ability to pay rather than their age. And so I'm having difficulty with using that particular age as a reason to eliminate the fee from that perspective. But not opposed to giving seniors benefits, but I do think we need to look at this one more carefully. So, Mayor, if you're bringing it back at budget time, I would support that.
Thank you, Councillor. And just to your point, I believe, and memory correct, the idea with this report was to expand the hours for seniors to use their membership to get more access to the facilities. My understanding, it wasn't just a monetary thing, but I could be wrong on that. But maybe a little bit of both, maybe I'm not too sure. Any other questions from council members on that, perhaps at this point? Seeing none, is there a motion from council to accept the report as information when it's on the screen? Councillor Barnhart, you'll have the floor in a moment. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that the May 24th, 2022 report, implications of expanding hours for the senior access membership, be received as information. And just if I may clarify,
Yes.
the hours that it's open now are, if I'm not mistaken, there's a free period. Is that correct? That from 12 to 4, they don't pay?
That is correct, yes. And this report was expanding that
Right. So
to 10 a.m. to
essentially
6
it's a
p.m., correct.
revenue loss.
10 to 6.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion accordingly. And that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, Ms. Cuthbert. Appreciate that. All right, our next item on the agenda is 5D. Councillor McCook, motion following notice, school pilot project, Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center passes. In a moment, council, you'll have the motion on the screen and you'll be able to speak to your motion or make your motion and then speak to it. Thank you. Please make your motion.
Thank you, Mayor. My motion is that by the end of the second quarter of 2022, administration prepare a report on options for a school pilot project that would offer BSRC passes in schools, and that the report include the following: options for types of passes, budget implications, age restrictions, i.e. without parental supervision, information on activities that could be accessed, and potential liabilities. So I recognize that the library just added passes, which is great. I'm super happy to see it, and it'll be a great addition for the city. However, what I'm proposing here would be a bit different, and I believe it would reach more families. I was approached by Daneluik School about piloting something like this. They've spoken with Leduc, who has successfully done this program. And having passes in the schools would also allow for greater access to possibly younger children who may not frequent the library. And as a quarter of our residents are younger than 14 years of age. As per the report, I just wanted to see what the implications would be to have a pass in each school if a school chose to have one. This would allow families to utilize or even test out a pass without financial barriers, as we know the pandemic has created many barriers to access for families for various reasons. As per Don Searle School, they stated that some of the benefits of this program would include improved community wellness, creating connections within the community, more physical activity which contributes to overall wellness, and supporting social equity and strengthen family bonds. This would really go a long way for our young kids who may not have the same access as other kids in their school, but would benefit from using facilities from time to time. So the support would give us a good idea as to the financial impacts for us to decide on the feasibility of potentially moving forward on something like this.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councillor. I'll ask a quick question before I open up to the rest of the council members. One question is on the school pilot project, are you envisioning one school will do the initial pilot project and then if it's successful, looking at rolling out to the rest of the schools within Beaumont? You mentioned in your comments, all the schools, whereas a pilot project to me kind of means one school to start with. Can you clarify what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think we could pilot it in all the schools, I think is how this motion is done. And then to determine kind of the budget implications and stuff. And then I guess if we pilot it in all the schools, we'd be able to determine which schools used it more or which used it less. And
okay, good. Thanks for clarifying that. Members of council, questions for Councillor McCook on her notice of motion. Councillor Barnhart, Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just have one question about the timeline. Second quarter of 2022, if I'm not mistaken, that's June. End of June. So is it possible to extend that?
I believe we had clarified with Paul, and maybe, I don't know if somebody can jump on, yeah, that is feasible to bring back the report. The idea was to have it back in time to potentially then move something forward in time for the school year for beginning of September.
Thank you. No further questions? You're good? Seeing no, oh, Councilman Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I was just trying to recall the City of Leduc program, and is it the Active 8s and 9s program that you're thinking about that was done in Leduc? Because I don't know that was school based. I think that was just kind of across the community. If you paid taxes in Leduc City or Leduc County and were in grade 8 or 9, that you could apply for a pass. Is that, or is there a different program?
This is different. This was more widely used.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. See no further questions? Councillor McCook, any final comments? Or you're good to go?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, council, I will request the vote on the notice of motion as presented. And that passed unanimously. Kat, thank you for bringing it to our attention. It's a great project. I think it's going to be very successful, very
Thank you.
inclusive, which is a great thing for us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for bringing it forward. Next item on our agenda is, where are we here?
I think it's me
5E.
again.
Councillor McCook, motion following notice, adopt adaptive programming at BSRC. So when it's up on the screen for you there, we'll have you move your motion, then speak to it, please.
So I'll move that by the end of the third quarter of 2022, administration prepare a report on adaptive programming, and that the report include the following: current adaptive programming available, opportunities for expanding programming, and program availability, i.e. number of registrations available. So I heard from a few families during the campaign regarding the fact that we do not have many programs for children and youth with physical and developmental disabilities, especially surrounding recreation. It's my understanding that we do provide some like adaptability swimming lessons. However, I've heard that they do fill up quite quickly, as I believe there's only a couple lessons. So if a child chooses to participate in a different activity as well, they are required to have their parent present, which can be challenging for both parent and child or youth. As you can imagine, as parents, having our kids to participate in group activities without us not only gives us a break, but it also encourages socialization for our kids, and they often listen better to coaches than they do to us. And I believe that children and youth with disabilities deserve the same opportunities regarding socialization. Also, as we continue to grow as a city and continue to work to being a more inclusive community, I believe that we need to explore some of these options for this population in our community. This may require additional resources. Therefore, I wanted to put this nomination forward prior to budget to get back some information from admin and to get a better understanding of what our current landscape is and what options we could realistically implement and what additions may be required for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions from council members for Councillor McCook's notice of motion? I have Councillor Tessier, followed by Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. Renee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McCook, for bringing this forward. I heard the same thing on the campaign trail, and from what I understand, the swimming lessons is only one student per one instructor, so it is limited. Just more or less a comment. I just want to make sure that when we do bring the report back and emotions put forward, that it's meant for City of Beaumont residents, because that was one thing I heard where a lot of people from different communities are noticing what we have, and then they take up a lot of space from the actual residents that have missed the boat. So just a comment, but yeah, really like the motion. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, thanks to Councillor McCook for bringing this forward. And one of the things I've been wondering is that, you know, upon this getting some support from council and getting a report gap, I've been wondering about a potential data gap here actually, because, you know, the subject is adaptive programming at the BSRC. And what I don't see is a request for a community scan to see what other you know, programming might be available from other nonprofits in Beaumont. I don't know if it exists or not, but an important piece of information might be if it doesn't exist, that we would know that too. So I don't know if there is some way to broaden the scope, or if we should or shouldn't. Maybe look to Councillor McCook for thoughts on that. Happy to support what's in front of us, but just, you know, I don't know, or we don't know what we don't know about what else might be available in the community. And that's just my point. I don't know what to do with that piece of information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook, do you want to speak to that, or do you want to wait to the end?
My understanding is that there isn't much available, but I can't say for certain. And I think that's why it had been brought up, is because as a city, we don't have a lot available, and a lot of people end up going into Edmonton. But I'm happy to broaden the scope if you have a suggestion.
Thank you. Councillor McCosk-Swain, you have the floor. Sam?
Yeah, so the way I read the motion, I get the title, but the way that the motion doesn't actually include the BSRC. So, I mean, to me, when the way that that motion is read here, that the report should be coming back and taking a look at adaptive programming across the city. So I don't know if you need to modify it. I mean, you could be clearer, a friendly amendment to the motion to be a bit clearer.
Councillor McCook, would you consider that, or what are you thinking based on Sam's comment?
Yeah, so I would.
Don't have that.
Yeah, I would take that out, or across Beaumont, or for all Beaumont.
Councillor McCook, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I think it was more broad without that, correct?
So you wish it to be taken out?
Yes.
Okay. We'll make that adjustment. And Sam, do you have a follow-up? I've got Councillor Van Nieuwkerk with a follow-up. Go ahead if you like.
Yeah, I just wonder, is that clear enough for administration? Do you want the motion to be more direct than that?
Ms. Bujea?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor McCook, I just want to clarify that we're understanding. So we're talking about recreation adaptive programming. Do we want to include information on what is currently available throughout the city as part of this report? Was that the intention?
Yeah, we most certainly can.
So what I might, oops, it's hard to type and speak at the same time. What I might suggest, current adaptive programming available, both maybe through
Through the city.
the city and in the city. that might just add a little more clarity.
Yeah.
And then I think we're where we need to be. If all of council agrees that's a clarifying amendment, then we could treat it as a friendly.
Councillor McCook, you're okay with it as it's reading now?
I'm okay with that. As long, yeah.
Thank you. Sam, a follow-up, then I've got Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment, and I understand where Councillor Tessier was going with folks outside of Beaumont. Just wanted to highlight that Leduc County did contribute significantly to the building of our facility and the upgrades to the pool and all that sort of stuff. So, and I didn't think you meant to exclude our county friends. I know what you're getting at. I just wanted to make that clear that that we welcome our friends at the county, and they're up on our in the building there for their contributions. So I just want to highlight that. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. The county was and is a good partner of ours. I think Councillor Tessier may have met places such as outside the county. Let's leave it at that. Yeah, we are in the county. We're surrounded by the county. Awesome. So Councillor Newkirk, you had your hand up for a question. I've got Councillor Barnhart. So Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, I think that the amendment to that first bullet, I think, wraps that up nicely. My question is just on the title of this. Do we have to change that as well? Because it says adaptive programming at Beaumont Sport and Rec Center. So maybe it should be just adaptive programming in Beaumont, just to reflect the change that we made. I just don't want to lead us down a different path the next time we bring this back up. So thank you.
Good observation. Thank you very much. Councillor Barnhart, Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor. And one comment and then a question. Comment is I'm just really taken by the how having this recreation facility in our community is really expanding the types of services and the types of things that we are looking at providing for improving the quality of life for all our citizens. So it's a spin-off here that I know the recreation and social services, and just in terms of quality of life, really go together. This is proof of it. And my heart is glowing. Anyway, the question is around adaptive programming. And I have an idea what that means, but I don't know if everyone does. Does that require maybe in the report that comes back some clarity around what all we're envisioning there? Everything is kind of like, yeah, but what does that mean? Is it physical? Is it social? Is it emotional? Is it intellectual? All kinds of adaptive programming, or is there a limitation on that in terms of the physical? I guess that's a question, and I don't need the answer now, but I wonder if that's clear enough in the motion.
Do you mean clear enough for us or for administration to take back? Administration. I believe in speaking with administration, they were clear on what my intent was in regards to adaptive programming, specifically around recreation, as it would include children and youth with both physical and developmental disabilities. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. See no further comments. Kat, one last comment, or you're good to go?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Seeing no, I will now call the vote on the notice of motion. Please vote accordingly. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Councillor McCook. Another very inclusive idea, and much appreciated. Thank you for doing that, for bringing it to our attention. Council, next on our agenda is 5F. Mayor Daneluik, motion following notice, safety enhancements, crosswalk lights. If you could please, Ms. Bourget, when you have a moment. Okay. Council, I move that by the end of June 2022, administration prepare a report on potential pedestrian safety enhancements for existing crosswalks in Beaumont, and that the report include the following: identifying potential high traffic crosswalk sites, types of safety enhancements such as light standards available, budget consideration and funding source, and timelines for installation. Now, Council, I will speak to my motion now. As you may know, I did give you a heads up a little earlier this evening. I did change my motion slightly from what it was 2 weeks ago to make it a little less restrictive and a little more open and a little more flexible in terms of getting a report back to us with various options. So I did change some of the wording. It's a little less wordy than it was before, and a little less restrictive. So with that, I'll take any questions from Council. I think it's fairly straightforward. We discussed this back at budget a year ago about using some of our funds from photo radar sources to enhance safety in our community. And best way of doing that is crosswalks and safety, that sort of thing. So it goes to our our objective of safety for our citizens and that sort of thing. So I'll take any questions from council at this time, please. Councillor Tessier, Renee?
Thank you, Mayor, and I 100% support this motion. I just have a question on, because I've asked it on a couple of one of my committees. So when we put this forward, is it every year we do something like this? And do we use the complete revenue from photo radar for these type of things and we completely drain that reserve? Or I'm just wondering the process of how this works for funding. I don't know if it's an admin question or
Nope.
for you.
Good question. I'll try and answer as best I possibly can. Mr. Blank was not here to be more specific, but the previous council, which I'm very happy, had done the idea of taking photo radar revenue and paying it separately. So it's not part of operating. It doesn't go towards snow removal or grass cutting. It's set aside for safety initiatives. As how the council of the day sees fit to define safety initiatives. I'm suggesting we do some of the money that we have in there and enhance the safety of some of our crosswalks in town using things like light standards or reflective paint, any way to make some various crosswalks more safe. Now, will that deplete the entire amount? Probably not. They're going to come back with some suggestions on identifying 3 or 4 or 5 crosswalks that could use lighting. Here's a price for that versus safety paint or any kind of reflective work, that sort of thing. And we'll, as a council, decide how to proceed. So I do not anticipate the entire amount being done in 1 year, not at all.
Perfect.
Does that
Thank
help?
you. Yep. Oh, yeah. I think the lighting on the crosswalks is the most effective, just a personal
I
comment.
agree entirely. And to give you some feedback on that, we had done some crosswalks in the past with the lighting on both sides of the sidewalk with solar panels to power the lights. They were coming in between 18 and 24,000 each about a year ago. But with supply chain issues and price inflation, that's why just my motion to be less specific on a number of crosswalks to see what's available. Supply chain may actually make it impossible this year. We don't know that yet, but give you an idea. If it was 24,000 a year ago for a crosswalk, it could be 30 or 35. And once we know that report coming back, identifying which crosswalks are the most receptive to having lighting, we can determine how many to buy, and supply chain being available, how many we can actually do this year, if we can at all. Hopefully we can. I should have this notice of motion in front of council probably about 6 weeks ago, but I kind of forgot to, and it was on my plate and it fell off my plate. So now it's on my plate again. Does that help?
That works perfect. Yeah, we got to keep up on them. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy, you have a question or
Thank you,
observation?
Mayor. The observation I'm making here is following up on Councillor Tessier's comment, because my understanding, this was already a process in place and that the budget is there and the administration decides where to put it. Like, are we saying council is going to make the decision as to where to spend the money? That's the part I'm not getting, because that's getting into the weeds as far as I'm concerned.
Let me clarify that. We did not in this past budget process that we all were a part of. We did not identify any way to use the money we had set aside for say, safety issues from photo radar proceeds. We didn't do this part of our capital budget. So I'm simply suggesting to have council administration come back with a report identifying ways we could spend the money that's already been allocated, but not allocated in our money, but not set aside for a specific purpose.
Well, that's still, the question in my head is, are we going to be picking which projects? Is that what you're suggesting?
They're going to be
That doesn't
identifying
seem like
which
something council usually.
they're going to be
does.
identifying which crosswalks could be made more safe by using either light standards or other methods to make them safe, and we decide if we want to proceed or not. Hope this answers your question. Maybe I didn't answer that well, but
Well, it just seems very operational in my mind. I mean, we've established a budget for it. We have a process for how the money gets into it. And I think maybe the administration can help me out. Am I missing something, Ms.
I'm
Bajaj?
seeing Ms. Bajaya.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Barnhart. The intention would be to have administration bring forward options for which crosswalks we would recommend based on the data we have. We have some studies that have been conducted. So we would be bringing forward recommendations for which crosswalks and what sorts of safety enhancements we can afford to do at this time. So that would be the intention, that as we understand it.
Just if I could clarify, if the mayor didn't make this motion, what would the administration's process be with the dollars that have been collected?
Administration would be bringing it forward in the budget process if this motion wasn't made. So this is accelerating that process somewhat.
So it would come forward
As
anyway.
part of the budget,
Did it come forward last year or did we miss it?
No, my understanding is by the time the study was conducted, it was too late to bring it forward in the budget. So if this motion does not pass, administration would continue with bringing forward recommendations for safety enhancements. If this motion passes, we would just be accelerating that process.
Okay.
And to help perhaps clarify, Kathy, if this motion goes nowhere, nothing happens this year. It'll be part of the 2023 budget. I'm suggesting that we didn't address it as part of our budget 2022 process. And quite frankly, it was off my radar too. It slipped off. Administration to bring it forward. This motion, should it pass, will allow administration to accelerate getting some safety issues done this construction season, should supply chain issues actually allow us to get material in to do it. So I want to get something done this year rather than missing a whole construction season. If we
So
can
my,
do it.
my only question is I want the process to be there and followed, not to be council having to go in and remember to do this, so that we have a policy
Yep.
that will continue in the future. And I assume that's where we'll go once this happens, but it sounds like the administration would have brought it back, but because of whatever reason, they didn't.
Yeah.
Am I right there that we don't have to change policy?
Yeah, I like to avoid missing a construction season if we possibly can. But
Yeah.
your point's taken on procedure.
Okay, thank you.
Are you comfortable with that
Well,
explanation?
I'm comfortable moving it ahead, but I don't want us to be micromanaging to this extent. That's all.
No, I agree with that last observation as well. Council, any further questions on my motion? Seeing none, I will ask council to vote accordingly, please. Thank you, council. That passed unanimously. Thank you very much. The next order of business on our agenda is 5G. Mayor Daneluik, motion following notice, first minor football home game event. If you could please put the motion on the screen, Ms. Boujé, when you have a moment, thank you. I will move that by the end of June 2022, administration prepare a report on planning a minor football home game opener event and the report include the following: identify options for the event, associated costs, and a funding source. And this is something we have spoken about previously. I'm with council members, myself, simply saying that because of our new artificial multi-use field, it allows our Beaumont high school football program to have their very first home game ever in Beaumont on September 16th. And I thought it was a great way to have some kind of a celebration that night. And I've spoken to Mr. Suter in charge of recreation facilities, and I'm envisioning this event to be not overly expensive. We have our own stage. I'm suggesting we put a stage up, have a bit of a party in the recreation BSRC's parking lot. If we have a beer garden for the adults, that's going to be run by a nonprofit and a business that don't be cost the city. And they bring in food trucks, that's not a cost to the city either. I want the event to be interesting, fun, but not a lot of expense to the city. So this report will give us options on what we can and can't do for an event on September 16th to celebrate high school's first home game. That's the intent. Questions from council on the motion, please? Seeing none? Oh, sorry. Councillor Tessier, Renee, you have the floor.
Just a clarifying question. So we're going to do it we're going to go from the field to the rec center?
Yeah, to have the party, you pretty much have to because there's not a lot of space in the parking lot at the high school to actually do it. Now, if the report says that's a better place to do it, I'm fine with that. I'm just suggesting the rec center because it's far enough away to have a big, large space, lots of parking. We could have a beer garden there if that's a possibility for the adults, not the kids, just so we're clear, for the adults, and food trucks, that sort of thing. So it could be, it's coming down to a space thing. And I thought the high school parking lot may be tight for space for that kind of an event. But the committee will come back with a report and let us know what the options are.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you, councillor. See no further questions from council. I'll ask for the vote, please. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, council. I appreciate that. Moving on with our agenda. Let's see here. 6B was under the, pardon me. We have 6A, Council Code of Conduct Bylaw 1011-22, first, second, and third reading. And I believe administration will be presenting that momentarily here. Ms. Boujé, are you presenting? Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. So I'm Sandy Bajaya, the Director of Legal and Legislative Services, and I'm very pleased to bring this report forward to Council. Council first adopted its Council Code of Conduct bylaw in July of 2018. Aside from being a governance best practice, establishing a Code of Conduct bylaw is a requirement in the Municipal Government Act. The MGA, or the Municipal Government Act, an accompanying regulation sets out the requirements for the Code of Conduct and includes a mandatory review at least once each municipal term. So that's every 4 years. Administration conducted an initial review of the bylaw and presented a report to the Committee of the Whole in April of this year. The report provided some background information on the Code of Conduct and identified some potential improvements for the committee's consideration. The Committee of the Whole discussed these potential improvements and had the opportunity to ask questions. Overall, the review of the bylaw indicated that the legislative requirements were being met. The review also revealed a few opportunities for improvements. Attachment 1 to the report before you provides a summary of the changes suggested for the bylaw. In brief, the format of the bylaw has been updated to the city's most current template. Marginal notes are included for ease of use, and plain language editorial changes were made wherever possible. The section which addresses general rules of council has been deleted from the bylaw, since those deals are more appropriately addressed through the council's meeting procedures bylaw, and they're actually included there as well. The section on election campaigns was likewise expanded to provide better guidelines for councillors on the use of municipal resources and the intersection of councillor and candidate duties. There's also greater clarity on the role of the returning officer. Attachment 2 of the report provides the new bylaw. If council is satisfied with the new bylaw, then readings may be given today. Alternatively, council always has the option to direct administration to make further amendments or changes to the bylaw. So with that, I'm very happy to open it up to council's questions and comments.
Thank you, Ms. Bajaya. Appreciate that. Council, questions for Ms. Bajaya on the presentation on the proposed bylaw? Councillor Barnhart, Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I've probably asked this question many ways in different ways, but it seems I'm trying to find the actual page it's on, but it talks about conflict of interest again. And we've had the presentation from legal and conflict of interest, pecuniary interest, two different things. I understand that totally. Our code of conduct speaks though of conflict of interest. So that's where I get kind of like, okay, we have to be careful of conflict of interest, but not under the MGA, under our code of conduct. And I wonder if you could just clarify that very clearly again, is that conflict of interest have to be declared, but we still vote on it, on the matter? Just if you wouldn't mind, I hate to bring it up again, but it just comes up every time.
Not at all. Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart. It is a very tricky portion for councillors to navigate. So the Municipal Government Act says that councillors must vote on any matter before them unless they have a pecuniary interest. Pecuniary interest is very defined in the Municipal Government Act. So it's when you have a financial interest or a close family member has a financial interest. So in the situation where a councillor is facing a pecuniary interest, they have to declare that they have a pecuniary interest and they actually have to leave the meeting until that item is disposed with. Other times, councillors may be in situations where they have what might be perceived as a conflict of interest. So perhaps there is a matter in front of council that the councillor is very keenly aware of and supports and has advocated for in the past. There's no requirement that they declare that conflict of interest. There are a lot of exemptions in the MGA because we understand, of course, that councillors are members of the community. So, you know, councillors will have children in programs. So councillors will vote on particular programs that may be a benefit to their children, but it's a common benefit to all residents. So there's no issue with that sort of thing. When councillors sit on various boards and committees, they may be part of an advisory body that is bringing forward a recommendation to council. It's common that perhaps the councillor will say, I sit on this committee, I listen to the conversation, I support this. They are still required to vote on the matter, and it is their right to vote on the matter as a councillor. So it can be a very difficult thing to navigate, but they are two separate things. Pecuniary interest and conflict of interest are two separate things, and they have different consequences. For pecuniary interest, that's the one that councillors have to be keenly aware of, because there are times that will preclude them from voting. So sorry, that was a little bit long-winded, but I wanted to try and cover off all the bases, because I know that is a bit of a sticky wicket for councillors.
If I could just say that number 28, the way it reads, and this is in front of us today. So 28 says members ought to be free from undue influence and not act or appear to act. So I guess I'm wondering, do we need to change that in any way so that that's vague for me in terms of, I understand what you said about the MGA, and I understand that we still have to vote. But would someone perhaps take umbrage with a member of council who perhaps chair of one of the committees that's coming for money to council?
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart. So section 28 refers to this. Members are to be free from undue influence and not act or appear to act to gain financial or other benefits for themselves, family, friends, or associates, business, or otherwise. So really what that section gets to is that councillors have an obligation, and this is in the Municipal Government Act, to act in the best interests of the community, the municipality, and the region. So this is really what that is getting to. This language is pulled directly from the template bylaw that municipal affairs, Alberta municipalities, and the Rural Municipalities Association have collectively worked on to put forward. So it's not implying, there is no intention to imply that, you know, councillors cannot have a preference for a particular course of action or be in support or have ideas about what is good for the community. It's just being free from undue influence. So for example, a councillor shouldn't be putting forward a motion to get something advanced because it's benefiting their friend group or their family members. That's all that means.
So it's a level of degree in terms of the support you're providing for it.
That's right. Councillors are always going to act. Hopefully councillors are always acting in the best interest of their community and of the region. And that's the expectation on councillors. And of course, all councillors are human beings and can have ideas and preferences. They just have to be open to persuasion and not have their mind closed when they're making decisions. That's the requirement.
Well, thank you for the clarification, and I apologize for
Absolutely.
asking that question yet
No,
again.
I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Question for administration onto, I guess it'd be page 40 of 81 and specifically number 44. Sorry. Yes, number 44 there. So it states, it says members who are, this is under the election campaigns portion. It says members who are nominated to run for re-election must not participate in any municipality sponsored events requiring them to perform official ceremonial duties between nomination day and election day. So I just want to understand how that actually works. The provincial government has changed nomination day, you know, so that's to be open the year in advance, to January 1st. Just some comment there, and then I've got a couple of back and forths.
Thank you so much for the question, Councillor Van Newkirk. Through the mayor to you, Councillor Van Newkirk. So there is a change in the Local Authorities Election Act. People can place their nomination paper starting January 1st, but nomination day is actually September 20th. So it's really just that period between September 20th and October 18th that we're talking about. So just the few, it's about 2.5 weeks. So historically, you know, this is common practice that there are no major municipal events during that period in respect to the fact that there is a campaign. So this would not preclude members of council from taking part in official duties starting in January, just that very small period.
So a follow up to that, then, do we need to include that in the definition section or something for some clarity? Nomination period versus nomination day. I don't know, like, I'm overlooking it here and I've been through a couple of elections, right? Like how do we make that more clear?
So nomination day is a defined term in the Local Authorities Election Act. So that's what that refers to, but we could add a definition, absolutely, of nomination day, just for greater clarity.
Yeah, I think that might be a decent add just for a little bit of clarity there, because we do have a definition section. So, and sorry, I just got to scroll down another second.
Oh, it's a good point, Steve.
Yeah, I think my second question was already covered in half of the answer that you gave, Councillor Barnhart. So I'm good for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further questions from council on the presentation on the bylaw 1011-22? Seeing no further questions, Ms. Bajaya, do you wish to speak?
Oh, Mr. Mayor, it's, we could do one of two things. We could give the bylaw first reading, or we could just refer it back to administration to make that addition.
Okay, just seeing one minor addition, I'd probably simply do it tonight if we can. Add that addition tonight, or can we do it tonight?
We could do that tonight. I would need a couple of minutes just to draft.
I'm just
that.
thinking if council has the appetite to continue
Sure.
this evening, we should just get it done and move along. If it's council, is it okay to ask council, are we looking to do 3 readings this evening? Do you have any reason not to from anybody? Seeing none? Okay, why don't we, at this point, go ahead, Sam, you have a question?
And I hate to belabor this. This is such an important document for us. And obviously there's only 6 of us here. I wonder, and I haven't spoken to Councillor Miller about this beforehand. If we are making a change, is it appropriate to kind of push it just to make sure that all 7 of us are here so that she has an opportunity to vote on it or speak?
I actually think you read my mind. So I was going to say, take a 5-minute recess and figure out we want to delay until Councillor Miller's back. So we can do that. I think there's some validation to the point of maybe having all 7 of us here. I see no reason why we couldn't wait.
If council would like, we could make the amendment and just not give it readings. It will just come forward at the next council meeting. So we could just do the one amendment to the proposed bylaw and then just not give it readings, and it'll come back on the next council agenda.
Sounds like a plan. Steve, you okay with that? You had a question, or you're on the same line? Okay. So we'll proceed that way, Ms. Bajay, if we can do that. Okay, that'll take care of that item. Seeing how it's 7:17, we're about not quite an hour and a half, but now is maybe a good time for a quick 5-minute break.
Okay.
And we'll come back and we can then continue on with councillor inquiries, because 6B was part of the consent agenda. So we'll come back with councillor inquiries, response and report 7A in about 5 minutes. Let's come back at 7:25. Okay.
Mr.
Sharp?
Mayor, would you like
Yes.
to do the amendment before we break? I have it ready.
If you're ready, sure,
Yeah.
let's do that. Thank you. So we won't break just yet. We'll do the amendment first, and then we'll break.
We'll be efficient.
No problem. Take your time. We're good. Member of council willing to move the amendment? Councilman Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Yeah, I'd be pleased to move that proposed bylaw 1011-22 Council Code of Conduct bylaw be amended by adding a definition of nomination day to the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Council discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll ask you to vote accordingly on the amendment. That carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, administration. With that, we'll take a 6-minute break. Now I'm back at 7:25. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We're back live and we'll reconvene our meeting at 7:25, and we are going to go back on our agenda slightly go back to under business items 5H, which we brought onto the agenda as amended, which is a budget amendment for the water system renewal program, St. Vital Neighborhood. Administration will be presenting, and we have a new presenter. And your name, please?
It's Ashley Lamoureux.
Hi, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
All right, so the purpose of this report is to seek council's approval on a budget amendment to increase the scope and funding for the water system renewal program project in St. Vital Neighborhood. The recommendation is an amendment to the 2022 utility operation budget to increase the scope and funding of the water system renewal program in the amount of $350,000 from $400,000 to $750,000 to be funded from the utility reserve for the purpose of replacing the potable water main. So when we currently are excavating and doing work within the neighborhood, we encountered some issues within the water main during our construction season last year. And during our investigation, or the issues that are popping up now have brought to our attention that this water main is going to cause us additional problems in the scope going forward in the 2022 construction season. So in preparation for that, we are hoping to replace that water main and put it into the roadway, so to further avoid any potential issues that may crop up due to this old water main. No problem.
Actually, my mic's on now. Thank you very much. Very straightforward report. Appreciate that. Members of council, any questions for our presenter? Councillor Tessier, followed by Councillor McCook. Renee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. I actually heard this discussion on the campaign trail, and then within the first month of us taking office, a couple emails regarding, when things are opened up and it's aged that much, and again, it's that concrete asbestos. They ask those questions, and I'm really happy to see this, so I'm 100% in support of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor McCook, followed by Councillor Monkoff-Swain. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Just to clarify, you have option 1 and option 2. Is it the same cost for both options?
I'm not sure of the option 1 is, there's not a definite actual cost to it. If we don't backfill, or if we have to backfill with fillcrete, there still remains the risk of damage to the water main. So although the cost may be, the cost is likely a little bit more for option 2, the risk associated with option 1 could in fact end up costing us more. Also, if we would end up eventually having to replace the water main, and so we'd have to dig up all of the expensive fillcrete that we put in just to replace the water main at a later date.
Okay, thank you. So the 350, that would cover option 2?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and then is it up to administration to decide on option 1 or 2, or are we just based on the recommendation here? It looks like option 2. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kat. Councillor Monkoff-Swain. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks for the quick, short report and clear overview here. Yeah, I'm obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, I am strongly in favor of option 2, the recommendation that's in front of us. We've got to get this done and do it right away. I think that the concern that you might hear just from the residents, just from an impact perspective, and I'm sure if you were out there, to Tessier's point, there was a lot of disruption for these folks, and here we go again. But I think we just need to get out ahead of this and really make sure that we take the time to head out there. And I know that the team is doing this, will do their best that they can, but we just need to make sure that that we're really clear to the residents on what we're doing and why, and so that we can dispel so many miscommunication or misinformation, I should say, around this. So nothing for you from an infrastructure perspective, but just I'm sure administration is aware of how much impact we caused in that area recently, and yeah, we'll be ready to get those calls coming in. So let's be a bit proactive on that. So I'll leave it at that. But we'll be prepared to support the motion once I see Councillor Van Nieuwkerk still got a question. So good.
Thanks, Sam. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. No, I support option 2 and it's opened up. Let's fix it right. What I would say, just a question to administration on the financial side. One thing that wasn't provided in the report, unless I've overlooked it somewhere, is the current, let me get my wording right here. The current balance in the utility reserve and what it will be following this withdrawal. I don't, I think it's important for everyone to see what those numbers are. I don't know that administration will have them offhand, but I'd appreciate getting those numbers back just so we understand what the utility reserve balance will be after this approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Good point for information. Appreciate that. Seeing no further questions, I'll ask for Councillor to move the motion on the screen. You'll have one last chance for any questions before we vote. Is there a member of council willing to move the motion on the screen? Councillor Barnhart, Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to make the motion that an amendment to the 2022 capital budget to increase the scope and funding of the water system renewal program in St. Vital neighborhood in the amount of $350,000 from $400,000 to $750,000 to be funded from the utility reserve for the purpose of replacing the potable water main be approved. It's a long
Thank you,
sentence.
Councillor. Appreciate that. It's a mouthful, isn't it? That's a long one. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote accordingly. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, council. Good decision and good use of our reserves. In the utility reserve, that is, of course. Thank you. Next is item 7 on our agenda, councillor inquiries, responses, and reports. 7A and 7B have been replied to and have formed part of the agenda package. Are there any new councillor inquiries to be made this evening? Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, and Ms. Boucher, I sent a councillor inquiry over your way. I don't know if you've had a chance to have a look at it, but I could read it here if you haven't got that far yet. Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And it was just something that kind of come to me on the break. So I just wanted to move this forward. Yeah, so please provide an update on the status of the Township Road 510 study that was previously approved by council. In addition, has administration had an opportunity to connect with Leduc County to determine any potential project synergies moving forward? And will this item be included for consideration in the 2023 budget process? Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Are there any further councillor inquiries this evening? I see Councillor McCook has his hand up. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, further to our earlier conversation, you'll see it on the screen there. Request to please provide council with a summary of the requirements for locating buried utilities during ground disturbance activities in the city of Beaumont. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. That's also a good one to bring forward as well. Are there any further councillor inquiries before I have one of my own? Seeing none from any councillors. Councillor Tessier, please proceed. Go ahead, Renee.
Sorry, am I allowed to do this? Ask a question that I previously forgot to ask on the St. Vital thing right now?
I would say, I don't think so, but let's get through these inquiries first and then we'll come back to you, okay?
Okay. I can ask it afterwards too.
Okay. We call it something different. It's a different water main. Okay, no, we'll get back to you, okay? All right. Are there any other councillor inquiry before I pursue with mine? Seeing none, please provide information of the city's efforts to address potholes, including estimated timelines. Thank you, council. Are there any further councillor inquiries before I loop back to Councillor Tessier? Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, Steve, you have the floor, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. No further inquiries. Just wanted to make a statement here quickly.
Okay.
and it's just regarding potholes, actually. I wanted to acknowledge in the meeting here tonight that there has been a lot of discussion in the community surrounding potholes, and I'm glad that you brought forward the councillor inquiry that you did tonight. What I would implore administration to do is to prioritize and get on filling these potholes for residents who want to see it. The councillor inquiry process is going to allow, for an answer to Councillor Daneluik at the next meeting. But what I want to put forward tonight, just in this councillor statement, is that the residents need to see some action on potholes and pothole filling, and some kind of at least some prioritization of some of the more traveled roads and such. I think an inventory has probably been done by now, and we could do a little bit of a risk ranking of some of these. So just wanted to put that forward in a councillor statement tonight. I don't often make a councillor statement, but I thought tonight was the night for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think you read my mind with that, actually, because I've gotten probably 2 or 3 phone calls the last couple of days regarding potholes. And I have discussed administration earlier this afternoon, which prompted my inquiry this evening. One point, which is a fair point, was back on March 19th, I shared one of our social media publications from the city talking about potholes and our procedures going forward for filling potholes. That's March 19th. It's now May 25th, and there's quite a number of potholes not been addressed yet. So I think there is some validity to some of the concerns from the residents. And I think administration will definitely, it's on their radar. It has been on the radar before, it's on the radar once again. And I would greatly appreciate some response back in the near future regarding that and making sure our residents are happy with our services. I know they are, but there's always room for improvement, and sometimes weather works against you. So we'll work on that. Thank you, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm not sure if this is actually an inquiry or it's a question to the rest of council. I was approached recently by Carol Hudson from the Beaumont and District Heritage Society. It was actually at the Volunteer Appreciation Night. And she did inquire whether councillors would like to have a tour of the building. She's very interested in giving personal tours, or groups, however we want to do it. Very important that I think this project continues to receive the council support. And Carol's a great one to give us that information about the progress that they're making and what they still need to do. So I meant to bring this forward sooner. I apologize for that, just been very busy. But I wonder if we can somehow get that on our agenda so that we can have administration set that up for us and see when we're available. Just give Carol an opportunity to schedule those times in. She's more than willing to do one-on-one when we're available. Or my suggestion would be we pick a Thursday or a Friday night or something like that, and then we can say what times we're available. But I don't want to get into doing that now, but I do want to see it on our agenda that we get that done.
Perhaps Councillor she could send an email to yourself or myself directly with the offer for the tours. We can maybe put into a doodle poll with council and see what may work for whoever can make it on that particular day, or we'll try and figure it out. Does that sound okay?
So you'd like Carol to send an email to you?
You or myself, whichever's easier. Perhaps maybe me directly rather than you than to me. Yeah, just whatever's easier. I think it'd be best to send it to me and I'll get out to council. That'd be okay?
From Carol is what you're
Yeah.
expecting. Okay.
Let's do that and see where it goes, okay?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Are there any further councillor inquiries? Seeing none, let's loop back to Renee's question if we could, and we'll sort of play it by ear on this one and see where it goes. Renee?
I do want to apologize for this, and I guess I could put in as a councillor inquiry now, but from the highlighted version here on the map for the St. Vital water main renewal, I know the rest of 45th Street and 47th Street were under the same construction. So I was just curious, and 100% my mistake not asking why isn't the rest being upgraded at the same time? And do you want me to just put that in an inquiry? It'd probably be easiest. And I'm sorry about this. I apologize.
I think Renee and I having a presenter here who may be more fluent in the details.
Yeah.
Let's do just a quick email, an inquiry, and we'll get that answer back for you.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
No, you're okay with that?
Yep.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Well, next on to our agenda is CAO update. Ms. O'Neill, I guess you're on for this evening.
I'm on.
You're
Good
on.
evening. First, I just want to acknowledge the comments about the potholes. We're on it, and I will get back to council of where everything's at in the queue when it comes to those. Annoying potholes. In terms of CAO update, we've got some public engagement in the works. We've got the land use bylaw survey that was launched. We are currently undergoing the refresh of the land use bylaw, and the public engagement has been started. Today, we launched the online survey for residents and any other stakeholder to share their ideas about the land use bylaw. Another public engagement that we have starting shortly will be regarding our urban forest management strategy. We're hosting a tree planting event on June 4th from 1 to 3 p.m. We'll have over 200 trees available for planting, and it's on a first come, first served basis. The main booth will be at the BSRC parking lot, and planting will occur along the LeBlanc Canal, and it's a bring your own shovel event. Another quick update here is not one you would typically see in a CAO report. We don't usually talk about job postings. However, this one is a little bit different. Team Beaumont continues to grow with our brand new equity diversity and inclusion coordinator position. This position will act as a resource and liaison between the community and agency stakeholders to ensure a coordinated approach to locally driven preventative social initiatives within the city. This job posting closes May 26th. We have a couple of events coming up too. We have Recycling Roundup. This is for electronics, hazardous materials, and tires, amongst other things. And those can be brought to the Recycling Roundup event on May 28th. More yard cleanup. We have large item collection from May 30th to June 3rd. And we're offering curbside collection for large items, Zone A and Zone B. This is for furniture, mattresses, appliances, etc. And then last but not least, we have not one, but two ribbon cutting ceremonies on May 28th, as council knows, 5 p.m. at Four Seasons Park for the multi-use field, and then at 6 p.m. for the ribbon cutting at the West Rec site. That's it for updates.
Thank you. So Neil, appreciate that. Any questions on the CAO update as presented by Ms. O'Neill? Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this coming Saturday night, 5 o'clock and 6 p.m. to have the official grand opening of the multi-use artificial turf field. And of course, the 5 ball diamonds and dog park, which is hot anticipated by many residents. And looking forward to that as well too. So it's going to be a very exciting weekend for Beaumont, and hope you all can make it as best you possibly can with your schedules permitting that. Seeing no further questions for the CAO update, we'll move on to notices of motion. Are any notice of motion to be brought forward by councilors this evening? Councillor Tessier, I believe you have something to bring forward. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move that prior to the September 13th, 2022 council meeting, administration prepare a report on the feasibility of constructing an RV Sani station in Beaumont and include potential costs, funding available, potential locations, and any other relevant information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any additional notice of motion this evening? Councillor Tessier, I believe you're on a roll here.
I will move at the June 14th, 2022 council meeting. I'll move that prior to the September 13th, 2022 council meeting, administration provide a report on the cost of paving the portion of the road to the West Recreation site, as well as paving the pathways to the site, I think we'll put. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there additional notice of motion? Ms. Bujaya.
Mayor Daneluik, this is the notice of motion that council discussed once we received the open forum request. So you haven't had a chance to see this, and hopefully it captures your intent.
Is it okay if I move that, or is it prefer to have a member council move it? What's better procedure?
Either would be acceptable, Mr. Mayor.
I'll give it a go. At the June 14, 2022 council meeting, I will move that by the end of 2022, administration prepare a report that provides response to development concerns raised at the open forum presentation on Forest Heights on May 24th, 2022. Okay. I already moved it, didn't I? I'm just worried about the timeline being end of 2022. Oh, sorry. I thought your mic was still on. My apologies.
That's okay. Mr. Mayor, so this is your notice of motion. So this will be debated on June 14th. It's just, has this captured the intent of what you wish to have in the notice of motion?
Yes, it definitely does. I'm just, the timeline's a bit long for me, but we can discuss that in 2 weeks when I make the motion. Sam? Yeah. Okay. Can I change my motion here? Ms. Bajia?
Mr. Mayor, it's your notice, so you can make the change. I just took a stab at what I thought you
No problem. It
wanted.
was a very good step. I should have been more clear before I started reading, actually, because I was on a roll myself. So I'd like to change it to say that by the end of the third quarter of 2022. Because we'll do it now instead of doing 2 weeks from now. So I appreciate that. Do I need to restate that? Or are we okay for the record?
No, that's fine, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
So
thank
this
you.
will come forward June 14th.
Thank you very much. Are there any further notices of motion this evening from any members of council? And Ms. Miller did not give me anything ahead of time, so I'm sure Ashley has nothing to bring forward for notice of motion in her absence. So I would not harm her behalf, but she had nothing to bring forward, so we're okay with that. The next item is item 10, closed session. And at this time, I'll read the, where's my notes here? Hang on a second. Yes, please, that'll speed things up. I appreciate that. Now, do I need to do the initial wording on the notice on the closed session? Ms. Bujia?
Mr. Mayor, it's not necessary. If you like, you can, but the important thing is to ensure that the public understands which sections of FOIP we are going into closed.
We're doing 25s, not.
And we
21,
need
24,
25,
and
that's
25,
correct.
I'll simply state that as a reminder, under section 197-3 MGA, council prohibited from passing a resolution or bylaw during a closed session meeting. And with that, I will ask for a member of council to move into closed session based on the motion ahead. Councillor Tessier, you have the floor, Renee.
I will move that council move into closed session pursuant to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, sections 21, 24, and 25 at 07:47 p.m.
Thank you, councillor. Discussion on the motion, council. Seeing none, I will call for the vote accordingly to move into closed session. And that carries unanimously. We will move into closed session and reconvene in a moment. Good evening. We are live again after our closed session. There are no business arriving, no motions arriving from the closed session. We will reconvene our schedule, our agenda, going back to 5C, which is the request for extension on several reports from administration. Is a member of council willing to move the extension of the reports as per on the screen? Councilman Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd be willing to move the request for extension on several reports. We'll just go through them one at a time here. That the land use bylaw report be brought back to council in Q4 2022. Original due date Q2 2022, revised due date Q4 2022. Second one, that the high school site assembly report be brought back to council in Q3 2022. The original due date was Q2 2022. Revised due date is Q3 2022. And the third, that the short-term rentals Airbnb report be brought back to council in Q4 2022. The original due date was Q3 2022, and the revised due date is Q4 2022. Lots of dates. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, council, please vote accordingly. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, council. That concludes our agenda this evening, and I will have declare the